Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Bree Buonomo. Hi if you're new here, or hey if you've been here before. I'm going to be doing my October wrap up. It's a little bit late and truthfully, it was a month. Guys, I'm just so sick of it being a day, a month, a year. When is it going to be calm? I don't know. Can anybody answer that? Probably not. But yeah, it was a month. It started off good, and truthfully, I think the only thing keeping me together was reading. So let's just jump into my wrap up where I talk about the books I read, the things I wrote, and some personal life tidbits. So first of all, we're gonna start with what I read in the month of October, and I read to completion 6 books, and I had one of my, I think it could be the first DNF I've had all year, which is pretty wild. I have not DNF'd a lot of books. I DNF'd a book at 50% in October, so I still think I did pretty well reading-wise. So the first book I finished was I Feed Her to the Beast and the Beast is Me by Jamison Shea. This was so good. It's a young adult horror that follows a girl who is a very, very talented ballerina, but she is Black, she is adopted, she has a lot of things going against her. She's poor and she's trying to make it in the French ballet, but because she is not exactly what they want in a ballerina, she decides to make a deal with the devil to be able to make it work for her. And she kind of starts to get wrapped up in all of the schemes. It was just really good. I was a little bit nervous like as the ending started approaching because I was really afraid that it was going to wrap up and lose that horror element, but it turned it around and the ending just, it made it works so well for me. It could potentially have a sequel, and I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I do like this, and I think it's good as a standalone, so highly recommend it. It was a good way to get into spooky season. Next, I'm gonna read this off because the title is really, really long, but I then finished a nonfiction, and it is Men Who Hate Women, From Incels to Pickup Artists, The Truth About Extreme Misogyny and How It Affects Us All by Laura Bates. So basically, Men Who Hate Women is like the main title, and this is a nonfiction. Literally, as it states, it is a book that dives into the culture of toxic masculinity and incel culture and just how men will go to extremes to harm and create very hostile environments for women. It was quite amazing. I do think I talked about this in the vlog that I did, the one vlog I did in October. So if you want to know more thoughts on that, go check out that vlog, but I highly recommend everyone to read it. I can't remember if it was a YouTuber, it might have been Reads with Rachel, or it might have been a TikToker that I don't know, I might have just been scrolling, but somebody pitched this and I was like, yeah, I think that's a book that I want to read, and it was by far one of the scariest books I read because it's real life and it's terrifying. So highly recommend it. I will probably, I've been toting it to people to read, especially people who are more open to nonfiction books, and I definitely think it's one you should pick up. Continuing with my spooky streak, I read The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. Loved it. Such a good book, guys. It was also one of the first physical books. Like, I read this actual book. Didn't listen to it, didn't pick up an ebook. I have not read a physical book like this in ages. And I'll talk about it a little bit in my personal wrap up, but I was able to read it in a car, which helped a lot. And that really kind of struck my match for reading physically again. Now, granted, this is the only physical book I've read in months, but that's besides the point. I really loved it. This is, Puritan culture and like extreme Christianity, but not that. It's its own world. And it's basically like if you take Puritan culture and cults and put them together, and they're extremely distrustful of the other. They try to hinder the other. They don't let their little town like leave its borders, and if you do, you're a pariah. And it follows a mixed race woman who is being called to the forest, or her mother had like ventured off and changed and like met up with the boy, and it was never the same, and then they both died. So like her parents are both dead. She was raised by her white grandparents, and it's very like, it kind of gives Mormon vibes too, where you have like multiple partners and like, I don't know. There's just a lot. It's very, like the themes are very complex, but like the way it's written makes it come together so well. And this was my in-person book club, the Pixie Book Club. This was our pick for October, and we had such a good discussion. For the most part, everybody gave it 4, 4.5, or 5 stars. It was a great read. Go read this. Alexis Henderson is an amazing author. Her writing is beautiful and poignant and blunt at times, and it just works so well. Love this. Next, I read A Door in the Dark by Scott Reintgen. I can never remember how to pronounce his name. I'm sorry. I think it's Reintgen. Scott Reintgen. This was pitched as like a deadly education meets something. I can't remember now, but basically you're following this group of kids. This is a YA fantasy, and they're in a world where it is kind of like a boarding school setup. They're in this school and they're trying to compete to be like the best and get picked into like these very powerful families and like very powerful groups in order to perform the best magic. So our main character Ren is trying to like be the best because again, she's kind of not the richest, doesn't come from a family that's well known, so she has the odds stacked against her. And when she's with her peers in this portal room, there's a spell that goes awry. They end up in the wilderness somewhere, and one of the 6 people that they were with is dead, and they're kind of figuring out what's going on. So it's kind of like fantasy. It's a little bit of horror, and then there were nun-style horror. And truthfully, it was slow to start for me. I really liked the concept when it was pitched, and I follow Scott on Twitter, so that's where I saw him talking about this. So I wanted to support it because he did say that he almost didn't get this published because no editor wanted to pick it up. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. The beginning was slow. I was losing focus. I was listening to it on audio, and I'm like, I just don't really care about the characters. But then as things started to pick up, I kind of continued to have a steady interest. Not my favorite book of the year probably, but enough that I would consider reading the sequel. My only fear on this one is that it's probably going to need a reread, and I don't know how I'm going to feel if I reread it. So I don't think I'm just going to be able to pick up the sequel and read it again. I'm already starting to not remember facts about this book, so take that as you will. All right, and then we read Fractal Noise by Christopher Paolini. This is like a prequel to Sleep in the Sea of Stars, which I loved. I love To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. I will never shut up about it. I love that book so much. It was one of like my intro, I don't want to say intro to science fiction because I already like science fiction, but like it was a very big jump into the last 2 years of me reading a lot more science fiction. So I was very excited to pick this up. I remember when I pre-ordered it and I got it, I was like, what the hell is this? It was just so short compared to the other book. And he talks about in his like author's note that like this started off as a short story. And I do think it probably didn't need to be even as big as this. It was pretty interesting, but there were times that I was getting a little confused at stuff and like why they were doing certain things or where things were located. I had a hard time visualizing it as I was listening to the audiobook. And because I was often listening to the audiobook while I was running around, I couldn't just pick up the physical book, but there wasn't really much to like really look at. Like there wasn't maps or anything. There wasn't diagrams in it. So, you know, it just is how it is. I didn't hate this book. I would maybe say it's middle of the road for me because To Sleep in the Sea of Stars was just so good in comparison that this was a little bit disappointing. All right, we're almost through the books, man. The next I read was Mary, An Awakening of Terror by Nat Cassidy. This is an adult horror that follows a woman named Mary who is kind of like an oddball. She has this weird past that is kind of wrapped around this cultish town in Arizona. Like they live in the desert. They kind of worship the desert, and you don't really know though, like, is it a cult? Is it all in Mary's head? Like, it's this weird, as you're like reading it, this weird combination of like, okay, what is actually going on here? Is Mary actually just crazy? Is the town like magical? Is the cult just like brainwashing people? Is there a cult at all? Like you just have so many questions throughout it, and it kept my interest. It was very fucking weird, I'm not gonna lie, but I really just enjoyed it for what it was. I do think it was too long. There were definitely some times where I felt the author was just repeating himself over and over again. But despite that, the fact that a male wrote a middle-aged woman and seemed to do a lot of genuine research, talking to females, like had a female editor, like did a lot of things to make sure that this sounded legit, I thought he did a really good job, and I appreciate that. So I give this my blessing. I think it's a weird book and you should probably read it. All right, and then the last book was Damned If You Do by Alex Brown. I was so hyped for this book. And this is the DNF. This was the most recent book that I finished in the month of October. This was the last book I tried, and I just couldn't get through it. This was pitched as queer Buffy the Vampire Slayer meets Filipino folklore in this heartfelt horror comedy about a high school stage manager who accidentally sells her soul to a demon. Literally says it on the back. That's why I'm reading it. I don't feel like it was. I don't think this was horror at all. Like, there was no horror elements, and I read 50% of the book, so I was really expecting more to happen. There wasn't horror. I could get the Buffy vibes. There's very clearly characters who are supposed to be the Buffy people. And I definitely felt like there was a Scooby-Doo vibe. Like, the way that the book is written is so juvenile, unfortunately. This is a YA, so I don't want to say that it's a bad thing, but I think, like, actual the young adult side, like the 12, 13, 14-year-olds may like this a lot more. I don't think teens are going to like this. The main character is supposed to be 17. She does not act 17, and I think it just seems like one of those moments where an adult author is trying to understand the youth these days and is not nailing it. So the characters just felt like they were out of like the 1960s, like a Scooby-Doo episode. They felt very caricature. A lot of them were one-dimensional, and the Filipino folklore just seemed to be specifically over one creature only, which is fine. And the creature was very cool, but it just didn't really come together for me. And I decided that halfway through, I was like, I'm going to get to the 50% mark. But if something doesn't catch my attention, I'm not going to waste my time. I'm just not feeling it. And yeah, it couldn't hold it. I was very excited. I do thank the publisher. The publisher sent me a finished copy. I really appreciate that, but it was a miss for me, unfortunately. So I'm going to actually donate this to the Pixie Book Club. We do a blind date with a book where people can like kind of win a prize and then they get to pick a book. So I'm going to donate this and hopefully somebody else will really enjoy it. And that is all I read. I already feel like I'm taking way too much time talking, so we're going to speed this through. And I apologize that I had so many books that I read that took up all the time in my video. So we're going to talk about my writing now. In the month of October, I do believe I said that I submitted to Apex at the end of September. I can't remember if I talked about this in my wrap-up or in my vlog, but Apex pretty much rejected me immediately. I don't even know if we got into October. They might have rejected me before October even hit. So I knew it was going to happen. It was fine. It was nice to have the challenge and the prompt, and I really liked the short story I wrote, but I knew after I submitted it, it was not Apex material, and yeah, they rejected me. Then in October, I also submitted to Crepuscular. I was very excited. I really, again, liked the story I wrote in 250 words. But once Crepuscular posted their initial short stories, I knew immediately that it was way more literary than I was anticipating, and I was rejected. It was pretty quick to that one too. I'm like, well, you can't win them all. The rejection was very just to the point and blunt. There was like no feedback at all. So I was like, okay. I started writing another short story in October for Crepuscular. I didn't finish it. There was, shit happening in my life, but I wrote like the first draft of it. I really liked it. I just needed to edit and kind of make it fit the word count because I was a little bit over. So yeah, I'm really excited to get back to that eventually and hopefully put it into submission again. But that was that. And then I also submitted to Full Mood Mag, which I know I talked about in my vlog. And Full Mood also rejected me. But I got one of the kindest and most supportive rejections ever, which made me feel good after getting my poetry rejected time and time again with like no feedback. I was like, oh my God, like I have something. And the rejection basically said they were getting a lot of like the vibes. So I was kind of like that. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. I guess like jaded, like very emotional, me to you type of speaking poetry. And the editor said that they loved it. They were, you know, that was the type of poetry they like to write. It was the type of poetry that they like to read. But for this particular submission, they were getting a lot of that type of poetry. So they were going to pass, but they encouraged me to continue submitting. They said, it's beautiful. We know you're going to get accepted somewhere. And that was really encouraging. So in October, I decided to take 2 of the poems I wrote for Full Mood, and with 3 other poems that I had previously wrote, edited a little bit, cleaned them up, and I submitted them to another anthology. That's taking submissions until the end of the year. I will not know if I get accepted or rejected until at least January. They are taking a hiatus to go through and read everything until the end of the year, and then in January they will be sending out their exceptions or rejections, and I just have to sit in limbo now. But I am really excited. I also decided after submitting to that anthology that the publishing company is also taking submissions for poetry collections. So it has to be no more than 50 poems, which I know I have. So in December, I think I'm just going to take some time to organize, clean up, and polish that collection and start brainstorming titles and cover artists potentially. Because basically they said if you get accepted, then you do have to pay for your own cover, which I'm fine with. And yeah, I have to start researching that. So not that it's going to happen, but like at least if I have this poetry collection starting to be put together, then even if they reject me, I could potentially self-publish it myself. So we'll see. So that was pretty much the month of October in writing. I did a little bit of prep work for NaNoWriMo. And when you're seeing this, I am trying to do NaNoWriMo in November, but life was a little bit crazy. So I don't know where we're gonna be, but I reread my outline. I planned a little bit more. I wrote a little bit more details out for my characters and my story. I already had this outlined back in 2021, but I think this outline was pretty solid, so I didn't need to add too much to it. So that was, I think, all the writing I did in October. I was writing relatively consistently despite everything going to shit, but nothing crazy to report on that front. So let's just get into the last bits, which is my personal life. I'll just start with like what I keep referring to is that, yeah, my personal life kind of got a little bit off tracks at the end of the month. My husband's health took another turn, which is very scary and frustrating when we can't get answers from doctors. And my husband's mother, my mother-in-law, also took a very, very scary health plunge. And truthfully, that it was just taking up a lot of energy and brain power that I could not really focus on anything else. And I was really struggling. Just like I couldn't like focus on like cleaning my house. I couldn't focus on writing. The only thing I really could do was go to my job, come home, eat, and go to bed. Like that was pretty much how I was functioning, or going to hospitals or going to here and there. So it was tough the last 2 weeks, but you know, I don't want to say too much more because it's their business, it's not mine. And also I'm kind of afraid to be too hopeful for things, to be honest. So we're just kind of coasting right now and seeing where things go. But I'm going to put into the universe that at least we have some good holidays, because the holidays are important to my family and I would like to celebrate them on a good note. So other than the personal stuff with family and their health, the month wasn't terrible. It started off pretty good. I was in one of my best friend's weddings, and you know, I'll put a little clip here about dancing. Oh, yeah. The best thing about being a woman is that I get to have a little fun. We had a really good time. The wedding was great, and the weekend of the wedding, I felt like I was myself again with my own health. I had no pain at all. I was dancing all night and I woke up the next day feeling good. Like it just was a really good day and I was very happy. That was like really good weekend. And then right after that too, my back pain started coming back and I was shooting down my leg again and I was just beside myself. So again, going into the personal health, it's not just my family, it was also me that was getting really frustrating. And I just didn't know why. Like I came back because I had a really good weekend. There was no pain that week. And then the following weekend, I like relaxed and I cleaned up a little bit. I read a little bit. I wrote, and the pain just was like, here we are, baby. So I had like a very high, like it was like a 7 or 8 on the pain scale day, and then it started to come back down again. So I'll take it day by day essentially. But because of that, I did struggle. We went to the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair, and it definitely wasn't the best year for it because I was in pain. My husband couldn't really eat much because of the celiac diagnosis, and he was also in physical pain too. So we were just kind of like moseying around, like hoping it was gonna be okay, but it was just a rough time, you know? So not that it was by far bad, like I love the Renaissance Fair, but it was just, we couldn't enjoy it to the full extent. And really, like, that was pretty much it. Like I said, the last 2 weeks were not great, so we really didn't get to do much. I was supposed to be in like a live stream. I couldn't make it. Like I wanted to do my own live streams. I couldn't schedule it. And any plans that I made were pretty much canceled because of my anxiety and my stress and my worries. So granted, I'm not going to say that that was a bad call, but it definitely did make a damper on the month. So I am hopeful that things will pick up, but I don't want to be too hopeful, like I said. So I am going into November with these plans. So I'll just do a little November sneak peek, I guess, or to the end of the year, maybe. We'll do like a little announcement. I decided that I don't know how much I'm going to post on YouTube in the next 2 months. I may take a full hiatus until 2024. I may decide to post when I have the energy and the time and the well-being to do so, but I don't know what that's going to look like. I am going to try to live stream every now and then, so at least you can see my face, but I don't know if I'll be vlogging or posting videos. I have my end of the year videos that I always do, so it's just going to depend on if I'm going to actually do them and post them in December, or if I'm going to just post everything in 2024 and like onslaught you with videos. We don't know yet, but please be graceful and understanding that if I'm not posting a lot, just because literally every time I think things are going well, something else happens, and it's hard to keep up with YouTube. I will say that I am going to be posting on Instagram at least. That might not be consistent either, but I usually post at least once or twice a week over there, and I tend to do my stories. So again, if you want updates, you can follow me there, but otherwise I'll just kind of do whatever I can, you know? And I do plan on trying NaNoWriMo. I don't know how far I'm going to get. I am going to aim for 50,000, but if I don't get 50,000, I'm okay. Brandon Sanderson posted on TikTok that he does not write 50,000 words in a month. He writes about 35,000. And you know what? If Brandon Sanderson writes only 35,000, then that's my soft goal, is just 35,000. If I get there, then I'm on Brandon Sanderson's level. And if I get to 50, then I beat Brandon Sanderson. But I'm just not sure because of my brain power. I write when I can, and some days that means I miss 3 days in a row. And that might also mean that I might write 10,000 one day. I have no idea, but I am going to try to do NaNoWriMo. I just don't know if I'm going to vlog much, and I don't know if I'm going to actually win, but we're here for whatever happens. And that's pretty much it, guys. So thank you for listening to me ramble and talk very fast at you as I'm trying to make this video not a bazillion years long. And I hope that you guys stick around and see what happens. So with that said, let me know what your NaNoWriMo plans are. Let me know what your favorite book was of October, or let me know something good. Like, give me some positive things because I'm so sick of negative ones. So tell me something good that happened for you in the month of October. And with that, I will see you guys next time. Bye.